Hi there, I'm Danny Henderson. Welcome back to my beautiful Disclosure on Everything channel. My guest today, as those of you who've been coming the last few months will have recognized, the one and only beautiful, sadly satanic abuse survivor, Rachel Vaughn. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, gorgeous. So lovely to be back here. Thank you.
It's so good to have you, Rachel Vaughn. And for those of you that haven't seen this lovely lady before, she is a force de jour. She has been through the worst, the most horrendous, unthinkable things that you couldn't even possibly imagine. If you were given partial imagination, you wouldn't be able to fathom what she's been through and survived, her siblings, and many other children who are now adults and adults who were once children. The SRA invasion on our global community is definitely a very real thing. And we're going to get today into some of the subjects of that. So don't have your children around. Please don't be selfish. It's not about you. We need to protect our children. They don't need to know everything that's happening because these things are being cleaned up. So we're hoping that they're going to come into a beautiful world that is healed and that no longer tolerates cannibalism and, unaliving of our young ones. And the fact that we need to bring to light more and more the governments are completely corrupt. Every single system you can think of and can't think of is infiltrated in some way. Today we're going to be talking about witches, warlocks, Freemasons, the Illuminati. We're going to be talking about how to spot a witch, for example, what is a warlock, and we're going to give you some of the highlighted dates on the Satanic calendar. But first of all, we're going to start with a subject we're both quite passionate about, and that is Silbury Hill. Now, may I come to you first for your understanding, knowings, and your experience of Silbury Hill, said to be Britain's only and oldest prehistoric pyramid or burial mound?
Yes, and fascinating subject. So I hadn't looked very much into Silbury Hill until I had a conversation with two friends, Ben Hawkes and Trevor Wee, on the 4th of July. And they were just talking amongst themselves because Trevor's been to Silbury, and Ben had just mentioned that he had crashed his car the day before, the day before. Or that, no, it was actually that day, it was on the 4th. And because of that weird sort of series of events, he ended up at Silbury in Avebury. And then he and Trevor were just discussing it. And then I noticed when I got off the Zoom with those guys and looked in my Telegram chat, a gentleman called Hamish, who shares in my chat, had mentioned or sent me a video that you had just done with Freddie Silver. And you had talked about Silbury Hill, and it's like, why am I keep hearing about this? So usually when I have those sorts of synchronicities, I get myself into action. Shortly after that, I was looking it up, and I just happened to find a couple of photographs where you could actually see a ley line moving towards the hill. Now, I know from reading Alfred Watkins' book and listening to many amazing people who have been studying this for a lot longer than I have, that these tumps and mounds are built in locations where you have the crossing of many ley lines. And I believe that Silbury is actually pointing out a portal space. So where all these ley lines crossed, you end up with these portals or these spheres, three-dimensional spherical spaces of incredibly intense magneto energy. So I was just looking at photographs and I found multiple lays in one particular photograph, and you could see the portal. You could literally see the portal at Silbury on the hill. And then a photograph from a different angle, you could see one of the lays feeding in to the portal, and you can see the portal again. Now, these photographs were taken at different times. One's a color photograph, one's a black and white photograph. But what really hit me was the fact that the portal that you can see, because ley lines are visible because it's a refraction of light and sound, and it produces perfect circles in the landscape. The portal in one of the photographs is slightly smaller than the one in the other, which shows me that it's not just markings on the hill, because these portals fluctuate in size depending on the times of the year. So you get they can grow or shrink depending on the frequencies at that time, which was just like another confirmation, just beautiful, which I needed because I was just getting ready to do another course. So it's just like, oh, this is fantastic. This is more evidence. So what I've been doing, with the course that I'm doing, teaching about ley lines, is looking around, just getting stock images off the internet, things that haven't been, obviously, I haven't put these images or these circles onto these images. They're free for anybody to access on the internet, and you can see the lays in the pictures. It's really cool. So this is such a very simple technique to find where these are. So this is more evidence, and it's interesting, even in Alfred Watkins' book from 1921, or 25, sorry, he was an amateur, oh, sorry, an early photographer, not an amateur, an early photographer. And even some of the photographs that he shares in his book, you can see the lays in there as well, and the portals around the tumps, the mounds, the churches, and all those places. So it's a fascinating topic. But I was looking at Silbury, just doing a bit of research on it. It's a late Neolithic structure, a gravel core with chalk and earth on top, which would have taken 18 million man hours, 500 men, 15 years to create, which then brings in other questions. Was it really barrows and people carrying this stuff up there? You know, you've got to wonder what was the real way that it was created, because that doesn't sound very logical to me. That's a long time, a long time. Lots of threes in the shape and size of it too. It's supposed to have been created around 2400 to 2300 BCE. And Flinders Petrie was involved in some you know, interest in the area, which is interesting because his grandfather founded Australia, South Australia specifically. So and it's really interesting because I was also looking at the correlation between Silbury Hill, and there's a marker in Sydney in New South Wales in Australia called Haslam's marker, which looks very similar. I've got to check out and see whether or not it's actually similar dimensions. But Haslam's marker is next to Accor Stadium. The stadium at Accor Stadium is like a big eye. Taylor Swift was at Accor Stadium earlier this year, and she had a massive backdrop with a ley line. Like it was clear as day, marked tree, ley line. And the ley line actually went down the runway, the stage where she was walking around and having all that loose energy pushed towards her into that particular space. So there are actually 4 markers in the area, and one's called Kronos Hill, which is very interesting because that's an ancient Egyptian deity. Sorry, ancient Greek deity, but Kronos is also connected to, there's a painting by Goya of Saturn devouring his sons, and that was also a different name for Saturn, was Kronos. And there's another marker nearby in Sydney called near Wu La Ra, Ra being obviously an Egyptian deity. So I've got to look more into that. It's very interesting. And there's an Ibis Street right nearby. Australia was basically founded by Freemasons. The streetscape has so much Freemasonic imagery within it. If you look at Canberra, it looks like it's unbelievable. I'll send you a screen grab of something that's been circulating of Canberra. There's owls in the streetscape. It's full on. So, you know, this is partly why Australia is such a mess, because there's so much symbolism. It was founded, and you know, the original peoples were squashed by the Freemasons. It's very much a Freemasonic space, unfortunately. It won't be for too much longer.
Goodness. And Canberra being the capital of Australia, right? Whereas
Yes.
most people,
Tiny little territory.
people think
It's a bit like what you see with the Vatican. That's its own little city or little country. Yeah.
Yeah, own little principality. Wow, brilliant. Well,
Mm.
thank you for that. Silbury Hill, to me, I mean, yeah, they say that I mean, number one, I think at this stage, people who are really paying attention and thinking for their own beautiful selves are realizing that the things that we've been told, the pyramids were built this way and Silbury Hill, 18 million hours, be quiet, just stop it. You weren't there and you're just making up waffle, you know. But it is said that Silbury Hill, Silbury, right near Avebury, Avebury, 2 berries there. Opposite Silbury Hill is opposite a burial site, and it is actually the busiest area in the whole of Great Britain for UFO activity and the entire world. Right there, it is reported around Silbury Hill and Avebury, the village that has to this day a huge standing stone circle. Ancient, giant stones that you can walk around and you can touch. And it's just an amazing, massive area. There's a village in the middle. in the past, whether it was the Romans, who knows, who cares, but unfortunately, took down a ton of stones and then built the village out of those stones. So all the energy that was there, although disrupted, still exists from a time before. I've been there several times. Silbury Hill is said to be our only prehistoric man-made pyramid or mound, and the great writer, author, teacher, Barbara Hand Claw, or some say Clow, who I was in touch with recently because I wanted to get her on my channel to talk about the very book that I found and read about Silbury Hill before I went there. And that book is called Signet of Atlantis. And in that book, she is in a meditative state, and she's saying that Silbury Hill was built as an honorary, as a portal, as a stargate, as a blessing, as many different things. And a man and a woman took their own lives to be at the base of this, and everything else was built around it. It's grass, it's limestone, it's chalk, and it was built for very significant purpose. Freddie Silver, in my last interview with him, said that one day when he was driving by Silbury Hill, he sees the beautiful, much spoke of green bubble coming out of the top. It creates much phenomena in and out of it. I want to make sure that I do the whole grab of this. Okay, yeah, make sure I've got all my notes here on this, because then we can move on to something else. But for years and years, Silbury Hill, I could not go anywhere in my life without the photograph I took of it in my car, in my glove box, and I had one under my bed, and I had one in my office. And I cannot tell you, and I was in my 20s when all this was happening, I cannot tell you what it was. Something in my heart imploded. Like, you have to get there, you have to be there. And I went to Avebury to see the stone circle in my 20s, not knowing anything about Silbury Hill. Oh my God. And as soon as I saw it, because as you're driving to Avebury, Silbury Hill is generally, depending on which way you're coming, on your right. And I was overwhelmed with it. Now, I've climbed it 6 times. It's against the law, so I don't encourage anyone to do it. They say that at a certain point, there was excavations being made, and they were trying to mine it. And some of the inners collapse. So who knows? I mean, they do anything to put you off, like keep you out of Stonehenge by saying the middle circle is actually collapsing. Who knows? But regardless, the secrets of our planet that belong to us, the people, have been hidden, lied on, erased, changed, made up, but when I climbed Silbury Hill for the first time, there were 2 girls behind me. Dr. Mangia Samantha Lawton, the black hole genius, was one of those girls. And I got to the top, so I'm very competitive, got to the top first. And then I was like, oh my God. And I just breathed in. It's flat at the top. It's a flat. It's not a point, it's flat. And I stood there like breathing in and just giving thanks that I knew I was on an ancient sacred site. And then in my mind's eye and all around me were all these women, ancient women, all linked together, and they were swaying, and they were saying, fire and thunder, fire and light, fire and thunder, fire and light. It was amazing. So I popped into a time loop, Rachel, in that moment, a glimpse of a past energy frequency that was purposefully sung on top of Silbury Hill and existed. And what's so great, because I've had my own experiences, everybody else on the planet that thinks they know more, they can shove it, because I own that, because that's my experience. And that's what we as a humanity, we've got to do more of this. Now, I'm going to tell people something else as well. This is also very exciting. So me and my friend Michelle, Michelle Humphrey, I said your last name. We climbed the second mound, right? There are 3 in that area, and I'm going to tell you where they are. So you got Silbury Hill here. Straight back down the road into the village of Marlborough, there is a beautiful, stately mansion and buildings. It used to be a stately home, which is now a college. It's Marlborough College. On that land, inside the grounds of the college, is another mound, equally as impressive as Silbury Hill, and it's called Merlin's Mount or Merlin's Mound. And I climbed that too. And that the
Wow.
entrance of that, and they've got it roped off. You're not allowed to do it. It's against whatever. You're not allowed, you know. I mean, it's been there thousands of years. I don't weigh that much. I wasn't worried. Anyway, at the base of that mound, somebody has built a grotto and using so many shells, ancient shells from the beaches. And it's just beautiful. It's like a little beautiful little folly, you know, an ancient folly right there. So me and my friend Michelle, we climbed to the top. We took pictures. Again, I just gave thanks. I was so happy to be on a sacred site, a sacred pyramid, something beautiful. And then as we were coming down, because we're coming off this huge hill, you know, that's looking out over the car parks of the college, two of the professors saw us and they're yelling up, "Come down, you stupid girls!" And my friend Michelle, she tried to hide behind the skinniest tree in the world. And it was just too funny. And I was just like killing myself laughing at my friend trying to hide behind a tree when it was like, they can see you, Michelle. And these women were like, you know, real matrons, like, get down, it's illegal. Anyway, we managed to leg it over the side of the mound and away and out of the site. But oh, that was so funny. Now that's the second one. The third one is in Pewsey, Pewsey, which is down the road. So we're looking at again a trinity of mounds that link together. They belong together. So that's Pewsey, that's Merlin's Mound, and that's Silbury Hill. And then if we look at the map of Britain, we see Stonehenge, we see Avebury, and we see Stonehenge, Avebury, and Glastonbury. And they're also on what looks like kind of an isosceles triangle, like a 3-point grid. And again, if we follow, let's say, Glastonbury across the grid of England into France, it goes on and on and on, and all these grid points meet up. All these, that some people call them the Michael and Mary lines. Often you'll see in churches when a ley line runs through a church, it'll be signified by a rose, a gold rose. I mean, there's so many sigils, symbols, and signals, aren't there, to point these things out. But I'm going to stop talking now. Please share your thoughts and your knowledge of the symbols, etc. too.
Well, it is really fascinating. That whole area is just beautiful. I can't wait to get over there at some point and have a look, just to feel it myself. Because again, you know, it's one thing to be able to see lays, but it's the feeling. A lot of people feel these things before they actually see them. So what I'm really fascinated with at the moment is the fact that that area also, not only does it have a really high incidence of UFO sightings, it also has the most number of crop circles that occur. And I've often thought, you know, to me, those crop circles are often very symbolic of the sort of imagery that I see with ley lines, these perfect circles. They're often big circles with little circles around them. And I think that they're actually marking out the lays coming into the portal space. So if you look at Stonehenge and Silbury Hill and all these other hills and markers, they usually have a really perfect circular base to them, which when it's in some instances where it's actually made of masonry, say like the Oracle of Delphi, that takes a lot of work to make masonry in a circle. Much easier to make it in a square or a rectangle. You're making it in a circle for a reason. It's marking out the portal space. So I love what you said about seeing the women going back in time and seeing those women circled around. And by the way, that apparently the summit there, that flat top is 30 meters. You know, again, these numbers, these beautiful numbers that keep coming up. I have often believed that the portal spaces are, they're not time sensitive. You're going to have the same things going on in there. It's going to be an echo, or the same time exists simultaneously. So they may well have been aware of you. You may well have been aware of them. Obviously you were. I've had a similar experience out the back of Port Elliot on the south coast of South Australia, where I saw megafauna, Australian megafauna, which are very odd looking snubbed shape faced kangaroo and an enormous wombat. And I was in a portal space, and I was recognizing I was in that space when I looked over and saw them, and they saw me. And then I had to look up, was it possible, did they live in that time in that location? And they did, but it was a very long time ago. So I think it was something like 50,000 years. So I know that the recognition was there. They saw me, I saw them. So it's very similar to what you just described. Very weird experience because you're thinking, how is this happening? But that was my first understanding that it is we're told that time is linear and it just isn't. It's not in the layers and the portals. It's simultaneous. It's amazing. And these spaces are so powerful. I loved what Freddie Silver was saying with you in your recent interview, where he was saying that these piezoelectric rocks, these quartz, sand, sandstone, all of these stones, all of this quartz holds memory. And it's like the database. It's like the repository for this Akashic information. And again, this is why these amazing stones are placed in these places. It's a library. So Stonehenge, Silbury itself, it's a library. So maybe that's why they've got the gravel core. Maybe they understand maybe it's like a battery and it picks up the information, or it's a database of some sort. This stuff's fascinating. I mean, we don't need computers. We don't need cloud storage. We've got all of that. We just need to learn how to tune ourselves into the information by taking good care of our pineal gland, making sure we don't have fluoride in our diet, making sure we avoid pesticides, all of those things that we as psychics know very well, because if we don't do that, we can't work.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, the sandstone, the chalk, the lime, the everything, the component parts, the often reported on stones that have been, carried from hundreds of miles away to a portal point, Stonehenge, for example. They are they're conductors of energy, higher frequency. They're like the light in the ground, the tower, we know that there are pyramids, and the pyramids are basically generators, they're generating energy, they're powering up the whole entire area. And across the entire planet, without exception, there are pyramids. China needs a kick in the ass, honestly. All this secretive, it doesn't pay. It would be so much better for China, the arsewipes that run China, I mean, specifically, the CCP, to allow our natural history. You don't own that history, and you don't own China. I know you think you do, but you really don't. It would so help solidify this beautiful knowledge that belongs to all of us. There's so many different repository collectors of data, different ancient scientific technology. And it's interesting, I just happened to have my Lemurian crystal, which I was drawn to today. And on the edge, as I'm sure you know, is all the grooves. And it is said with the Lemurian crystal from the time of Lemuria. And by the way, Lemuria was not named after the animal, the lemur. It is so insulting, and it just laughing in your face, people. It is a complete lie and fabrication. So these grids here, it is said that these ancient crystals, they've been programmed. And so when you're sitting quietly, breathing in, breathing out, just connecting to God, to Jesus, to the angels, to the earth, to whatever it is that brings you light and peace and calm, because you, my love, get to do that out there. You guys get to do it. It's your choice. They say that this can release or record information. These crystals, these Lemurians, are often found in the ground, like so. It's very, very interesting. And I love this one. I've had it absolutely years. It's got like a natural little place for your thumb. You know what I mean? It's it's interesting how a lot of crystals blend, and there's the kind of little finger space to us. We feel comfortable, we feel drawn. So what else can we offer the beautiful people watching around this subject of portals, Akashic records, libraries, holders of resonances, conductors, natural conductors, crystals, recordings, etc.?
Well, we need to know where the layers are in our own localities. I believe that's really important for people, because again, if you want to meditate, if you want to relax, if you want to tune in, as you were just describing, the most powerful place you can do that is barefoot on the earth in a natural setting, hopefully an endemic area that hasn't been bulldozed and re-sown with seeds from other areas, because it's all symbiotic. When you've got endemic forest, it's symbiotic. It all has grown together for thousands, if not hundreds of thousands or millions of years. You go out into those spaces, and if you find a ley line, you can actually sit within it, and better to find a crossing, a portal space, you can sit within it and tune in much more easily. Those who can't find those spaces can do that in the bath too, because water does the same thing. Water's a wonderful conduit for psychic information. But yeah, we don't have to necessarily go out to these incredibly powerful sacred spaces, because again, they're so co-opted, you can't get close enough. It's so frustrating. But you can go to locations like, for instance, where the dragon lines cross, the dragon lines being the largest of the lays on the earth. You can go to those crossing points. You don't have to go to the sacred site that's at that crossing point. Just being near that, within 100 kilometers of that, is powerful enough. You're still within it. It's because these are massive lays. So, and there are so many portal and crossing points that are kind of hidden by the fact that they will have a stadium in there, or they will have a church, or there will be, you know, an abattoir or a grave, a cemetery, or courts. A lot of, you know, law courts are in portal spaces as well. I know of people in the family court, which is a star chamber in most Western countries. The judge will knock 3 times before he walks in, and you would know from what you know that that's calling in a demonic entity. It's also, why would a judge knock on their own door to come in? It's part of a Freemasonic ritual, and I believe it's actually to bring in some sort of nasty entity to probably to prey on the Lucia and the misery and the grief of the person that's being highlighted in that particular setting, or people's. But yeah, so you know, every Freemasonic hall is in a crossing of portal, a portal space, a crossing of lays. So my hope is that eventually we will take back all those spaces, change the frequency, neutralize the negativity, bring balance back in. That's my hope and my dream. And I think we're going to come to that very soon. As Rory Duff has mentioned, we're coming up to Harmony time permanently with the ley lines in December of this year. That is going to be a very significant time. And I think we're going to see quite a bit of not just truth coming out, but probably quite a bit of chaos, especially around the October period, just before the December period. But from December onwards, I think we're going to see a big shift. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be wonderful straight away. It just means that the truth cannot be hidden anymore. I personally believe the fragments of the veil, which is what makes us forget our past lives and everything when we first come in, I think those last fragments will shred away around the December period when the Harmony time comes in.
You know, it's so fascinating. One of the things that you highlighted being the kind of collectors, the libraries, the, you know, Akashic record places. When we know, as we do know, that, let's say, for example, in Great Britain, where I am, and it's the middle of summer pretty much, and it is piddling with rain. I'm sitting here in a jacket. You know, this is typical English summer. Anyway, damn it, I forgot what I was going to say now. Take me back. What was I saying?
Spaces and how important they are.
Yeah, and the recording, the library. Okay, it's gone. I'm just going to pause for 1 second. I remembered. In the ancient times in Great Britain, we had, when the Vikings invaded, the Saxons, they would build their churches directly on top of the sacred pagan or druid sites. And it doesn't even matter if the people from the past were actually called pagans or druids. What's happened in 2024 and before is that the people that try and steer us away from truth of our planet and energies and the real natural beingness of love and connection, they have bastardized and criminalized the words pagans and druids. So regardless of what they were called, the Saxons came along and they took down the sacred temples and gathering places where the ancient people that lived here would gather and, you know, tune in and connect. Anyway, they put their big old churches on the top. And then at some point, 1066, William the Conqueror came on over and he slaughtered all the Brits and he took the lands, and then they built it's called the Norman Conquest, and they would build Norman churches on these sacred sites. And, you know, they are repositories. And as we are taking back our world, just to imagine and think of how much of these incredible pinpoints of light and life, like on this beautiful, you know, everywhere you look, there's pinpoints of life, and the ley lines on the world, and what the dark ones did, or the negative people that tried to take countries and take peoples, it's built and built and built, where they've tried to literally cover all the beautiful points of light up Well, we're taking it back. We're kicking it down. We're telling the truth, and we ain't never going to stop. And the more that people like you and I sit and discuss these particular subjects, the more we just drip, drip, drop, drop into people that go, well, I'd never even thought of that. And then hopefully go on to, read or look. And again, remember, guys, Wikipedia is infiltrated, massively so. Just look at my friend Dr. Christiane Northrup. They dare to call her a conspiracy theorist, one of the greatest gynecological doctors and obstetricians of our entire world of the last 70 years. Oh, but she's a conspiracy theorist because she pushed back against covidicy. It's just insane. So be careful.
Yeah.
But anyway, what would you like to say in response to that little
Well,
diatribe?
they did the same thing with Kathy O'Brien with her wiki page. It's just ridiculous, and it's not a choice. I'm sure she didn't say that was okay for them to put that up. But, every time you get pushback like that, because we realise that that's absolute rubbish now, we won't trust it, Wikipedia will just fall away at some point. Just like people don't Google things anymore, they use a different search engine. And, none of them are perfect, but, there's no point Googling because you're not going to find something on Google that's interesting. That's the sort of stuff that we're talking about. Or if you do, it's been amended or it's had the conspiracy theorist label placed upon it. It is utterly frustrating, but we will take those spaces back. And it is interesting the way that, why are these spaces so important? If this is all conspiracy theories, if ley lines are just, fancy and people who like to talk about fairies and things, well, then why are those spaces so freaking important? And why do they come in and stick their church on top of the other spaces and over and over and over again overlay in that particular spot? Because it is so important. And the dark souls and the secret societies, they know this. They know how important it is. So again, yeah, this subject needs to be spoken about often and for as many people as possible to be bringing attention to it. I do believe that this is the last fight. I do believe it's over the ley lines. Apparently there's a biblical quote with regards to that. I have read the Bible, but it was a very long time ago. Yeah, so we're coming to some, well, we're living through very interesting times, but it's going to get more interesting. And then I think we're going to have a really happy time. I think we're going to have, the babies that are coming in now are astonishingly amazing and powerful, a really high soul frequency, incredible souls. They wouldn't be coming in for a dystopian nightmare. Absolutely not.
No, exactly. Just to close up the ley lines, the light lines, the beautiful areas that we're discussing here. I truly believe, I know for an absolute fact, that the whales and the dolphins, they follow the ley lines. They follow the electromagnetic pulsing, which is what the ley lines do. They're electromagnetic frequency pulses. And so for millennia, our Earth was set up with her ley lines, her grid lines. And there's been, from the gray whales, traveling down to Baja in Mexico and back up again. And there's all these migrational sites that many animals go around the world to birth. A humpback in Maui, let's say, one of the birthing sites there. And over the years, the destruction, unpurposeful destruction with the Navy, etc., blowing up parts, just decimating a gazillion miles of, crustacean and ocean life. And they've literally shifted the grid lines, the ley lines that our beautiful whales and dolphins, as an example of species, would follow. And I believe that is one of the reasons why we have seen such catastrophic what looks like mass suicide, where the whales and dolphins are going where they're supposed to go, but they end up being beached because they can't find their way. And a lot of them, which is rarely reported, is their ears are blown out because of the sonic booming underground. Like, we need again to put our attention there. I know it's just so devastating. But these are things that have happened and they do happen. Then we look at the millions of miles or thousands of miles of the ridiculous wind farms, which we come to understand that nobody thought to ask, how are they generated? Are they run by diesel generators? Like all this, trying to turn us away from the natural oils and gases and coals that are part of our planet. Oh my God, listen to this. This is insane. I had no idea, because I'm not a good gardener, but I thought I'd get into it a bit. So I went to the gardening store to buy some pots and plants, some tomato plants and pepper plants and la la la. And the lady there told me that we no longer have peat, natural soil, PETE, peat. or PE80, peat from the bogs, from the original terraformed earth from thousands of years ago. Peat's gone. And so now you have to get soil that's kind of messed around by the manufacturers, and you have to pour bone meal, crushed animal bone, in your soil before you plant your. And I said to the woman, her name was Karen, I'm like, you're having a laugh, Karen. That can't be true. She went, no, Danny, it is true. I'm like, Karen, mate, this cannot be right. That peat, the original soil formations, that they said, oh, giving off too many gases, let's burn them up. Who are these Muppets that have taken over the last 100 years? Why are we not questioning every single thing? Well, we are, you and I are. We get on my channel and we just bang on about this and we bang on about that, because these things must be spoken of. What say you to those topics?
Oh gosh, I mean, they've been talking about, sphagnum moss bogs and, and the peat bogs, and talking about, that you can't take it away and you can't do anything with it for a very long time, but obviously they're starting to actually implement it. In my country at the moment, it's getting quite insane. It's not just those sorts of things that are happening. They're actually talking about people living in coastal areas being relocated so that they can then supposedly turn it back to natural space. But that's not what they're going to do. They're going to sell it off to the highest bidder, obviously. That's what they want to do with it. So, they're talking about putting people into communities, like forcibly putting people into communities, because one of our prime ministers in the 70s sold out apparently all of our titles. So very, very interesting thing. Why these politicians think they can get away with this, I do not know. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. The COVIDity that's gone on, not as many of us, according to the Deagle report that was prophesying that we would lose about 7 million. Well, that's not happening. A lot of people are working out how to get rid of what's been put into them, and they're getting, healthy again. So they're not going to be able to eradicate us as quickly as they thought they were. They're still trying to implement these things, which just makes me laugh now. I used to be frightened by it and freaked out by it, but I find it amusing, because the arrogance is just overwhelming. How they think they can get away with this. They're not even elected officials. So they've got a big surprise coming to them, I think, because they must be so very convinced of their authority and their omnipotence, but it's just not the case.
Yeah, that's so omnipotence. We mean impotence, the limp one. Oh.
Oh, I love it.
Moving along, let's talk. Last time we got together, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking around the witches, the Illuminati, and some of the Freemasonry symbols, sigils, etc. So let's go into some of your experiences, horrific, harrowing, unimaginable as a little girl to a young woman experiences in the Satanic cult that you were born into. Share with us whatever you feel drawn to regarding witches and warlocks, please.
Well, part of the reason why I have such a passion for the rebalancing and neutralizing within the portal and ley line spaces is because I've come to understand that many of the outdoor rituals that I was forced to witness and participate in as a child were in these spaces. And I know now the importance of having all of the constabulary, all of the judges, all of the people in power in the councils and in parks and wildlife, all having to be part of those groups, part of those satanic groups, in order to cover up and hide the fact that they go into these spaces and do these horrific rituals. So that shows how important getting out in those spaces and doing the rituals is to them. It's not just about them having control of one another through the blackmailing and I know what you've done, you know what I've done. That's not the totality of it. It is also conjuring up entities and getting power from that, which is incredibly stupid in my opinion. And it's also, they know that they have to pump this really negative frequency into the ley lines to try and keep us at a very low frequency earth-wise for the whole earth. That has failed. They may have been able to keep that back for some time, but as we come into this permanent harmony time with the leys in December of this year, that to me is us moving into the fifth dimension. So that means that they no longer have any power here, or they don't have as much. they've certainly lost the fight to keep us in 3D. What I witnessed as a child, these people would get together in large numbers. Like one of the rituals I was involved in, or I was mostly just a witness to that one. I wasn't being used to communicate in that particular one, but that was at least 50 adults. I estimate 9 or 10 children that were tied down to chairs like I was. And we watched something that's just too horrific to mention for YouTube. But a little one was unalived. And one of the individuals ended up in a very, very, very high station in my state. Hideously ugly person. And he was the one who actually conducted the unaliving. People were dancing. There was a very significant vehicle in the background that was just a shell of a vehicle, but it had been, I believed, used in something else. A lot of people wearing white. A robed woman came in as part of that. So they were enacting, or they were playing out a particular set of actions to produce a desired outcome. What's really interesting with that particular one also, they had the Boy Scouts come to actually help build the bonfire beforehand. There was a bus full of kids, sort of 8-10-year-old kids, maybe younger. And I'm sure they didn't know what was going on and what it was going to be used for. But I can imagine if I was one of those little boys, I would have been really angry that I didn't get to see the bonfire. You know, so they made these little children do the work, which is really interesting. That's all part of the ritual as well. Get children to do the work that's going to end up with the unaliving of a baby. Some of the other rituals I was involved in, one was a weird marriage ritual where I had to marry. Well, my father believed he was marrying me in that ritual, and trying to sell my soul at the same time. I gave my soul to Jesus in that moment, thank God. And I still have the weird little bracelet, which is a very odd metal that's never rusted. I still have that. It was given to me at 5, or forced upon me at 5, and I still have it on 50, and it's not got a skerrick of rust on it. So apparently it was from a tool ship. So I've published that, more evidence. There was another one where
Sorry, don't lose your thought, but can I ask you a question? Was the ritual at 5 years old for you to sell your soul and marry, was that to make you a bride of Satan in that particular ritual?
Potentially. So I have intentionally not looked too much into these rituals. I want to be able to remember it from my perspective, and not every part of those memories have come up. So I intentionally don't go out and look for the information, but that would make sense to me because it was a marriage ritual. But I was giving my soul to Satan at the same time, according to my father. But I realized he can't give away what is mine. And at a 5-year-old, I worked this out. And then he put this bracelet on my arm. Now, I got rid of the bracelet as quickly as possibly could. But then my sister found it and was, Dad was so upset. You know, he gave it to you and you threw it away. So I kept it, but I kept it hidden. And I've still got it. It's very, very significant. Just like the wedding ring that he had for my mother, which has 7 eyes on it, 7 eyes etched into the band. Eyes. Who has a wedding ring with eyes on it? Oh, it's revolting.
Before we get to
there was another one.
Yeah, before we get to that one, and hold that thought, please, I gotta ask you, you mentioned there was a vehicle at this bonfire where they're unaliving. What was the vehicle and what do you think it was used for?
So it was, I've got to get the name right. I believe it was a bellet. Now, there are photographs of very significant individuals who were involved in the disappearance of the Beaumont children sitting on that car. I believe it's the same vehicle.
Oh, okay.
And that was in the 60s, the photograph was taken. And one of those individuals is doing 18 years for child RAPE. At the moment, he's presently in, that's John Pike. And I was in that ritual, I believe, in the 80s. So it was very significant to them, enough that they were dancing on the roof. The woman and the man who were wearing white, who were part of the ritual and doing the dancing, were on the roof of the vehicle. So that vehicle was part of it. It was something very important to them. And then I discovered years later, my brother showed me this photograph. It's like, well, that's the car, because I'd never been able to work out what kind of car it was. It's such a weird looking car. Yeah, I hope I've got the name right. Again, I'm not a car historian, but yeah, I'm pretty sure my brother Andrew, who's very good with cars, I think he told me it was a Bellet. So yeah, so the other marriage ritual that I went through, I went to this Tudor resort in South Australia, off South Road, the main South Road. I won't name it specifically because I'll probably get done for defamation for saying that this happened there. But I was taken for a dinner. There was a large group of people at one end of a very, very long table. They were all watching me the entire time. But I was sat at the other end with my father, my MK Ultra abuser, and programmer and sexual abuser as well, who studied under Fiona Barnett's abuser, and they look very alike. So again, I believe they're related. We were sat at the other end, and this waiter kept coming up and just fondling me. And this is the interesting thing too. I was taken to buy a dress for this particular evening. I was only 14, and I was forced to choose a black and white dress, which was part of the ritual. So I had to be wearing the black and white Freemasonic, and it looked like a checkerboard dress. I mean, quite frankly, they're just large blocks of black and white. Anyway, he had his hands all over me, and my father in this program, I thought it was hilarious. And then later on, I was given something because I lost time, some sort of drug or alcohol or something. And then I was in one of the outbuildings of this Tudor resort, and there were markings on the floor and symbols. And I was actually, it's quite horrific. So I'll keep it brief. But I had my legs in stirrups, and let's just say they all familiarized themselves with me. And then I was forced to marry this person in the middle of the symbols on the floor. The only light in the room was from the window. It was full moon. So I could see some of what was going on, but not everything. And it was just bizarre. And after the marriage ceremony, worse things happened. So I don't want to go into that too much either. So, you know, these people do these things because they have the blackmail on each other, but they're also summoning up. They're summoning up entities. As a small child, up until I was about 6 or 7, I was used to communicate with these entities because I was highly psychic, and obviously I still am. Shut down the clairaudient aspect of my abilities because I don't ever want to hear anything like that again. So these people, I really believe that they're very foolish. It's a very dangerous thing to align yourself with these entities that cannot stand you. They're incredibly powerful. They're very, very dangerous. And again, you know, I have to look at this Tudor resort again. You know, there's so much that I need to go back on now and check out where were the ley lines in that particular spot, because it's a very well-known resort, very well-known. And I'll see if I can see them around that location and see where they all converge, because I presume it would have been where this little outbuilding was that we were.
Oh my God. You know, it's so difficult, you know, to hear all the things that, you know, you guys, you and Kathy O'Brien and Gloria Masters and Jeanette Archer, it's just so but you know, it's so important to keep like putting it on the table, on the table, on the table, because it doesn't matter. Like some people will watch you on my channel, then they'll write and they'll say, I couldn't watch anymore. And like, I get it. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, darling.
I get it, you know. But we have to hear. I just can't imagine, like, you know, you've created within you, you've pulled on that strength of a little tiny baby girl, and whatever it was that you came into this life with, this strength, this power, this love, like Kathy, like Jeanette, like Gloria, it is such a testament to see real warriors, real lovers, real overcomers, you know, and that you can sit and you can give such detail, and it isn't easy. It's never easy for you. And then we were talking off camera how the different ways that we have to learn to disassociate, so we're not in that trauma the whole time, and then it makes you forgetful and it makes you distracted, and but there's a coping mechanism. And I've never heard you say before, and bless your heart, that you shut down your clairaudient, which is the clear hearing to those that don't know, the clairaudient ability. And I completely understand why you would do that, because you don't want to hear the screams and the shouts and because it just conjures up then the clairsentience, and then it creates the clairvoyance, and it's just too much. If it's okay to go back a step, again, bring in more education to the people from you who've actually lived and survived these horrors. Can you tell us anything about any of the symbology or smells that were in, like incense or whatever, that were in the room when they were incarnating?
So I was not aware of what I was seeing at the time, but I understand now the compass and the square. So they were there. They were gold. There was a gold, the pentagram that was gold. I'm not sure if it was something that was actually drawn on the ground because it was quite dark, or whether or not it was something that was placed there. It certainly never got moved or touched. It didn't change where its location, so it could have been drawn down. There was a circle. The circle was in white. I had a sense it might have been chalk, but I don't know why. I don't think it was permanent. I think it was something that was only there for that particular ritual. There were other symbols and things, but they were very, very dark. I was aware that there were other markings, but I couldn't see them clearly enough. I think there may have been candles at a later time. The moon must have moved and there wasn't as much light coming in, but again, it was very, and I'm pretty sure I was given something at some point. It wasn't just dissociation. Quite a lot of the time, like I described the last time we spoke, there would be a liquid of some sort that I would be forced to drink. And interestingly, it got to a point where I would willingly take it because it took some of the edge off what was happening. It wasn't so bad. I could dissociate more succinctly. I think I was lucky in those rituals because I don't ever have any memory of having anything inhabiting me. Because again, they do these rituals. I mentioned before a knife assault. Before I was 3, I was about 20 months old, which is an attempt to shock the vagus nerve because it was from the back end before I was abused worse. And that is apparently a way of trying to actually put an entity into the child. I don't have any recollection of ever having anything in me. So I think I was very lucky, and maybe that's partly why I survived, or partly why I am still able to do what I'm doing now. I think for some who do have that experience, that must be unbelievably horrifying to not have control of your own body, to do things, horrific things in that moment with something else taking over that you can never atone for. And it, would be very difficult. And I know survivors who have done those things, and they're beautiful people, beautiful souls. And that it does darken your soul to know that that has happened, that your flesh and blood have done those things, even if you weren't in control of what was going on. A lot of people also don't realize that hypnosis is a massive factor in these rituals. So if you're being controlled and puppeted, a lot of it's through hypnosis. And these Freemasons are adept at that. My father was.
Yeah, I know. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist too.
Wow.
Practiced for a long time.
Wow.
It's so amazing how many of us become, hypnotherapists by training, by qualifying. And
Wow.
I've been quite vocal in particular about the quantum hypnosis techniques because of experience of witnessing, because of experiences of having to give therapy to some people who went through that, because of experiences of witnessing how Dolores Cannon, beautiful woman, I salute her, she did a great job of bringing information. But what also happened was it allowed the opening of knowledge that we can hypnotize someone and their body can be used as a host body to bring entities in, which is exactly what they do inside the Satanic cult. And it's good that we're talking about it. So again, people get so angry, rageful, aggressive. To me, I've had death threats on speaking out like this. But I'm not saying each QHTT or each clinical hypnotherapist. I'm saying that we must put our attention. This is one of the ways where we are captured. Now, a girl recently and a guy, I won't say their names, but they're creating a conference where they're literally openly honoring the Greys. They're saying the Greys are good. This Muppet boy said, you know, the Greys gave us technology. Yeah, they did. And it was a whole trick. And giving that technology to the American government, they did a deal which said that they could take a certain number of humans and do abductions and take their biographical, biological material because they're like, our planet's dying. Help us. We need your DNA. They can't put their DNA with our human DNA. It doesn't work. It does not work. And everyone fell for it. It's been ongoing. It's been stopped. It's no longer ongoing. But then last week, seeing this girl being promoted and she's going to hypnotize in front of all these people out in Germany on this sacred site that's been used for witches over millennia. You don't think that energy is still there? I mean, I'm sure there are areas that have been blessed and cleansed. I really do believe that. But there's a long-term history on those ley lines, exactly what you're talking about, right? It's all there, it's proof. And the people are sleeping there overnight as well. Good luck with that one. But they're
Oh,
planning. Right, I know. See, I'm just telling you, and look at your reaction because you've lived it. And these guys haven't. They've been inhabited by programs, maybe a Trojan horse. They're influenced, they're fame whores, not sorry. I tried to warn the girl, tried to warn the girl. Now she's going to hypnotize a crowd, and there's going to be a password that removes the consciousness of the man volunteering his vessel. How about that? And then the grey's going to come in, and everyone's going to be,
oh my gosh.
ooh, oh yes, oh yes. Now please let me know. What do you think about that?
Well, that's just like people playing with Ouija boards in the 70s and the 60s, thinking that was all just fun and games. That's extremely dangerous. Oh my gosh. I just hope and pray that this poor man understands. Well, he obviously doesn't understand the dangers. I just hope he's protected. I just hope it's a flop and it doesn't work for them. That's all I can say. But that's incredibly dangerous and stupid. I've been witness to in a ritual, and women were often the ones doing the conjuring. So in this particular, and often wearing all white, and I realize now at Eastern Star Sect, that's the female version of Freemasonry, they wear all white. So now I understand. On this particular occasion, I was still very young. I was being used to communicate. The woman who ran the ritual, who put whatever it was on the ground that was supposed to keep this entity within that small space, stuffed it up somehow. And the entity got out. Thank God it didn't do me, because I don't know why it went for her instead. Oh, because she'd set it up. So when these people set these situations up, they are responsible. They are the ones that get taken out. And she fell to the ground. And from my understanding, after this thing had attacked her, she didn't come back again. That was it. She was done. I never saw her again. And the whisperings of the adults afterwards told me that she didn't make it. So this is how dangerous this is. You just can't go into those spaces. And portal spaces, every dimension comes off those portal spaces. They are fifth dimensional, and it's like a train station for all the other dimensions to come off. So dangerous. You don't go in there and conduct rituals. You go in with protective 432 hertz music or Tibetan bowls, or you sing at a really high frequency and you put in love and positive intent and neutralizing, balancing energies. You don't go in and do that sort of stuff. It's extremely dangerous. I'm concerned also for the crowd.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, the girl who's going to do the hypnosis, she's, you know, when you watch her, she's so lovely. Like I like her. You know what I mean? Her personality, her character, it's so kind and she's lovely to look at. And she's got tones in her voice. And yet on the other side of it, I know that friends of mine have been saying to her, there's a serious grey issue here. And then but she's not being honest about how involved she is in this. You know what I mean? And then she's also put books out that are not true, some of the ancient history from people that she's hypnotized. And it's really concerning. So that's why I bash on or highlight. I don't bash on it, I highlight like all hypnosis areas, even the way, you know, I've hypnotized in the past, but I always go straight into the like over and over again, like giving up smoke. And it's very different. You know, I don't do anyway, let's not focus too much down that road, but just to make the point that I wanted to get your reaction and your true response to you having lived this and using the word hypnosis and the hypnotic trauma on you and other victims, like that, how much we all need to be aware of it out in the rest of the field.
Yeah. So if you go to a hypnotherapist, listen to your body's reactions to their voice, how they speak to you. If it feels frightening, don't engage. Don't go to somebody that isn't recommended to you. Obviously, Danny's someone that's obviously, you know, a beautiful soul and very genuine. Make sure you go for someone genuine. You can't just pick someone out just off the internet and just assume that they're going to be doing things ethically.
Oh dear. Let's take a step back to the Eastern Star. I know there are a lot of people that don't know in their towns there are Freemason clubs or lodges. There are Rotary clubs and lodges, gatherings, meetings, school boards, etc. There's also the Eastern Star, which is the female arm. And tell us what it's the female arm of, please, and how much it infiltrates the other systems.
So it's the female version of Freemasonry. So when you go to a Freemasonic lodge, it's the men who do the meetings. The women are there to feed them, to provide for them. They're not part of the meetings themselves. On the flip side of that is the Eastern Star sect, where the women, I'm sure they don't have men attending them, but the women are the ones that run the whole show. And so it's very much the same sort of thing. They have the rainbow girls with the Eastern Star sect. So they start recruiting very, very young. And it's a bit like, you know, your scouts or your the female version of scouts, but it's esoteric purposes. And again, apparently my grandmother was head of the Eastern Star sect in either my state or my country. I'm not 100% sure which. And she had an OBE and an Order of Australia medal. She was a Justice of the Peace. She won awards. She was very, very high up in politics in her time. And we're going back to the 20s, 30s when she was big and she had a lot of power. So it's very much what we've just been describing. It's rituals. It's gaining power the wrong way. It's trying to. This is the true essence of what a witch would be. And I know that the term witch is very much co-opted as something very, very negative, but I'm talking about someone who, witch in the term that people don't trust, a witch as in a dark soul in a human body that puts hexes and curses and uses demonic entities for power. There is also obviously white witches that do very good things, and they're the ones that were burnt at the stakes, not the dangerous ones, because they were the medicine women who and the birthing women, and they protected women, and so of course they had to be destroyed by the patriarchy. I believe the Eastern Star sect is very much a part of the feminist movement, which is not about empowering women at all, and about trying to destroy the family. You know, there's many different movements that are trying to destroy the family, particularly in the Western world, but the Eastern Star sect is very high up in that.
You know, it's important for us to point out and share that in every town, such as I mentioned with the Eastern Star, the Rotary Club, the this or that, there's always a good proportion of super good people that have no idea of the infiltration. So you and I are not slandering and defaming these groups. There was a group in Eastern Star group in San Diego. I was invited to join it. I didn't. And I'd already heard it, and I'm like, I don't want to play there. I don't know enough about it. But also some of the gentle subjects that they studied were, they studied astrology, they studied astronomy, and they studied sewing. I'm like, I'm out. I'm not doing any of that traditional stuff. No, thank you. But yeah, so it's important for us to say to people, look, we're sharing the darkest of the dark inside of these cult organizations that have been created to dominate the entire planet in every single town, city, and village, bar none, bar none. So yeah, all is good. There's good in everything. It's important. Tell you a quick story. I've shared it before, but on a way past broadcast, so I'll share it now because it's relevant to our conversation. So what I wanted to see what the inside of a Masonic lodge looked like, knowing that it's an inner sanctuary of, depending on where you are, different doors, and it's against everything. A woman is not allowed to enter the Masonic temple, especially alone. So I did. So I was living on Coronado, California. Now, what's interesting about Coronado, many different things. When King Edward abdicated with Wallace Simpson, Was it Edward or George? I forget their name because I really don't have much interest in the royal family. But anyway, that bloke, they have a house called Crown House, and the island of Coronado is also known as the Crown Island. And they have a gigantic sea-facing property there. Of course, they're dead, but you know, someone else took it over years later. But here's the point. That is a very significant island. Half of that island is a nuclear military base, naval base. Oh, yes. You see nothing all day long but the war machines coming in and out, the giant Chinook helicopters, the carriers. Yeah, oh, it's all going on Cape Coronado. And I lived there for 7 years, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. Lived it, breathed it, watched it, observed it. So this one time I'm in my 30s and I'm like, I want to go and see what the temple's like, this Masonic temple on Orange Avenue. So I go in and I was so terrified I was going to get caught because I know it's a no-no. But I'm not there to do any harm. I'm just curious. I want to see the history. I want to, you know, it's in quite an old building, as in 100-year-old building, you know, because part America, once they'd basically exterminated our indigenous, of which there were millions and millions of cultures, and tried to enforce just, you know, the white culture, which we know is reality. And they say America's a couple of 100 years old. No, it's millions of years old. But anyway, let's not go down that path too much today. So I go into the place and the doors open. I mean, I swear it was divine guidance. And I go up the stairs, up the wide staircase, and my heart is thumping like crazy. Anyway, and I come up to a set of wooden doors, nice antiquated wooden doors, and I'm listening and I open them. That's one set of doors. And I come into this little kind of vestibule area. And on the walls were all these pictures of women, and they were from the most covered up in her swimsuit from the 1920s, 1930s. They had all these beauty queens up to more modern era where they had less and less and less clothes on in this little entryway there. And then I went into another little hallway all the time thinking I'm going to get caught, I'm going to get caught. And then I got to the doors of the actual inner sanctum temple. And the first thing I could feel, because I'm a clairvoyant, and see was there were literal guards. There was dark energy guarding this door, and they were right there. And I'm like, no, you know, I'm like, me and Jesus are coming in. You know, me, Jesus, and the angels were coming in. We mean no harm. Step aside, small ones, because you can't have any fear. Otherwise, you're just stuffed, and you're going to get caught up in that negative energy, as you know, it's going to loose you in. So I gently open the doors, and I look inside, and the first thing that blew me away was all the lights were on, and every single symbol of every religion on our planet was up and expressed in the ceiling, this dome ceiling inside this inner temple. And I looked at it thinking, you know, there's Islam, there's you know, Judaism, there's Christianity, Catholicism, Kabbalah, like every religion established, all the symbols were together. And for a moment, I thought, oh, that's so wonderful. They're bringing together every single religion on the planet. I love that. And then I was kind of looking, there was a giant throne there. There were different colors. There were blues and there were golds, and there was the checkered floor, and there was some kind of an altar in the middle. And it was really quite a beautiful, ornate room, you know. And then I remember coming out of there, my heart still thumping because I'd managed to get inside and see. And then, of course, later realizing, well, Satan has, or believes it has, dominion over every single religion, bar none, on our planet. So that's what that truly, I believe, expressed. But what are your thoughts on my share?
I'm curious, did you have any ill effects afterwards?
No. At the time when
Well done.
yeah, because when I hit the two demonic or dark entities that was supposed to stop me entering, I just diffused, having had from birth such trauma with demonics that literally tried to suffocate me at 4 years old, a ton of them. You know, so my light was already supposed to have been out. I've survived it. I've had my own connection with Jesus Christ, although I'm not a Christian at all. And so I've had all of this experience of fighting the dark, standing against the dark. And I believe that's probably what saved me from a negative result.
And it often does. So what often happens, my experience, and I don't know if it's yours, but many of the survivors that I know have had many near-death experiences, is that you have the opportunity to go home on a soul level and not come back into your body. But then you get convinced that if you come back in, there's something you're going to achieve in that lifetime, and you do get protection. So, you know, I had a troll comment recently, that, you know, and this is one that I get fairly regularly, is, why is she still able to speak out? Well, this is why. This is why. It doesn't mean that we're shills. It doesn't mean that we've been co-opted, or, you know, somebody else is controlling us. We're alive because I've decided I'm still alive. I'm still here. I'm still sticking around, and I've got stuff I'm going to do. And that, you know, that offers protection. But if you've gone through these experiences and had what you had, you know, obviously those demonic entities knew what you were going to do in your lifetime, and they didn't want you to achieve it. So they're trying to take you out when you were young and vulnerable. Didn't work. Possibly you had an experience where you agreed to come back and you got the protection that you needed. So I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
Well, I don't be too. Again, you know, there's so many of us who've gone through different experiences, and if we are fortunate enough to overcome in whatever manner, but we stand for love with love. We love our brothers and our sisters. We have a passion for what is right on this planet. Then, you know, we all seem to find each other. So many of us find each other, and we all stand in awe, you know, of one another. And again, it's important to, you know, people that, thank goodness, you know, and sorry it happened to you, obviously, dreadfully sorry. And it's hard to hear your stories, but they're so important to talk about. You've got to put that into the field so people can acknowledge and know. But it doesn't limit anybody else's experience of tragedy, trauma, or violence. And you've never said that. I've never said that. We would never say that. Because sometimes people will look at you, Rachel Vaughn, and listen to your terrible horrors that have occurred on you and in you, and go, well, why am I complaining? But that's not okay, because then they're not taking the opportunity for themselves to heal. You know, their trauma could have a similar impact, although nothing to the graphic details you've suffered. And so we mustn't ignore that point either, right? And you do so much healing.
Doesn't diminish what anybody else has experienced or survived. I know other survivors who've had far worse than I've had. That doesn't diminish my trauma. So I'm, you know, quite often when I read for people, if they know me through my interviews, one of the first things they'll say is, I haven't been through anything like what you've been through. And I instantly want to say, that doesn't mean that your trauma isn't significant, and it often is. So, you know, thank you for bringing that up, because it's so important, because everybody has these experiences. It's a learning experience. If you're able to turn it around somehow and find some strength in it, it can make you a better person. Not advocating for anything horrible and abusive, but I refuse to be a victim. So that's my way of looking at it. And, you know, for those who still feel victimized, that's totally understandable and normal and fine as well. It's just, I refuse to be in that space, because it just helps my abusers to be in a victim state. And since I stopped being a victim, I'm a very happy person.
Yeah, so beautiful. You're such an amazing example of a healed person, even though we know that the healing, you know, still continues, and little chunks come up, and you can only do a bit at a time, a bit at a time, a bit at a time. And often when we hit rock bottom again, as I believe everyone does, and we hit rock bottom and we feel like, I can't go on, I can't do this, I don't want to be here, this, that, and the other, you know, often that's the time when we're at the lowest, where we hit another stride. We somehow wake up and we're still here. We somehow find a strength we didn't know we had to, you know, to proceed, because us humans, we are so resilient, aren't we? We're so powerful. And when we connect to that love in us, I truly believe that that is the saving grace of all.
It really is. It really is. We are infinitely powerful. We just don't realize it, because we're dumbed down in so many ways. Human beings have so many senses. It's not 5. There's so many more senses than the 5 that we're taught that we have. And you know, you're really got to think, why would governments and why would psychiatry and why would all these elements want us to be so doubtful of those extra senses? It's because a lot of the people that run the place are puppeted by attachments, or you mentioned before the greys, other elements. They don't want us to see them. They don't want us to know that they're there. They have to operate in secrecy to a degree, unless they're terrorizing someone and they want to be seen. And many of them do like to be seen because the terrorization is more significant and succinct. It's interesting with the greys too, because a lot of demonic entities appear in the same way. So I've always been a little bit, are they aliens? Are they demons? They're obviously both, because anything that's alien to what we're used to here is probably from somewhere else. Yeah, I've always been sort of a bit up in the air with that, because my experiences were not necessarily with well, the demonic entities I saw. Could have been, I suppose. They look the same. They look the same. It's hard to tell.
Me personally, my experiences with aliens, demons, and aliens, they are definitely different beings. They all have a different frequency to them, all three of them. However, the demons and the aliens do mimic, and they have mimicked. And I've even walked into the room of a 2-month-old baby to check on him, and there was an angel standing over him, and that angel was a demonic. So they do.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yes, they do. They definitely do. That's why I wrote my book. Where is it? Angel, I can't, it's over there. Angels, Demons, and Aliens. Again, to share my experiences of my physical interactions with all three entities, species.
Wow.
And but to highlight, because I did a broadcast with Jeff Murrah again recently saying, oh my God, you should so go on his channel. I should email you. Oh my God, that would be amazing. Jeff Murrah podcast. He's great. Let me make a note of that for you. Jeff Murrah. Anyway, the aliens, demons, and angels are three different frequencies, as in frequencies, electromagnetic fields. When I am aware of them, they come into different places in my field, in my auric field. I pick them up differently. Humans, earthbounds, they also have a group setting. If a beloved full of love comes to say hello, like yesterday, this lady I had, her grandmother came in to say hello. And it was so interesting because I said, there's a lady, but she's more mother age. I couldn't work out because the grandmother had died so young. So that made sense again. So I said, I have to give the evidence, you know what I mean? But again, this lady came in to my field, and it was such a high resonance. Whereas if I've connected with an earthbound spirit, who's alcoholic spirit, that's plugged into, say, a young guy that I'm talking to, and I can feel it. It is a lower guttural. It is different. There are so many groups of frequencies that over our lifetime we get used to recognizing. And that's why I do stand strong and I say to people, angels, demons, and aliens are three different entities. However, they can and do mimic. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I'm well aware of. Demonic entities will mimic whatever you are most afraid of. There's a scene in the Harry Potter series where they do exactly that. These entities are supposedly the children are learning how to fight off their greatest dangers, and it's their greatest fear that comes up, and that's what they do. So if a demonic entity knows you're terrified of spiders, it will produce a spider-like form. If it's dogs, they'll produce something that's like a dog. So they're very clever, unfortunately, very clever. But there are ways to fight against them and to protect yourself from them. And one really important way is to make sure you don't have what I describe as a leaky aura, where you're not imbibing of a lot of alcohol or pharmaceutical drugs or recreational drugs all the time. And you go out into nature and you plug up those holes in your aura, and you go out into water and you clear and cleanse and do those important things that keep the soul system healthy, to make sure that you're not going to be plugged into. Yeah.
So beautiful, so important. Is there anything else that, before we bring this fascinating conversation to a close, it's always such a gift. It's a gift to know you. It's a gift to have you. And I love sharing you on my channel. I just want to say to people as well, Rachel also appears on the regular on Shanti's channel, which is Aquarius Africa rising, AAR, Aquarius Africa. I always get it.
Rising Africa. Aquarius rising Africa. Yeah.
Chantel
Yeah.
Mayberg, guys. She's been on my channel. She's a beautiful South African warrior goddess, and she has Rachel on her channel a lot. So for a lot of other information that Rachel and I haven't covered, go there as well. Subscribe to Shanti's channel. She's been taken down, of course. She's working so hard to build her channel up. She is a real warrior. She's such a peace ambassador. She's so loving. She's so great. I love that lady. Hi, Shanti. So again, a lot of your backlog of much more information, hours and hours of Rachel Vaughn, guys, go there too. Rachel, I'd like to propose that we invite the audience the next time that you come back, because you're a bit of a regular now, that we can invite them to do another question and answer like we did before. So we can.
I'd love to.
Yeah, okay. So we'll have you guys in the comment section, not in the live chat. If it's in the live chat, we're not going to do it because we're staying focused on our content today for you. But if you want to leave under the broadcast your questions, you might want to know more about the Eastern Star, the way the Masonics are set up, the symbology, how you can protect yourself, or anything that you want that we can answer on BoobTube, please put it there. And in the next couple of weeks, Rachel will come back and we will take you through those questions and answers. Rachel, my love, what are your closing words today that you want to gift to our beautiful audience?
I just want to say thank you again for having me on, Danny. I really appreciate it. And for those who've listened, I'm not going to apologize for the content that was rather disturbing, but I just hope that you can take that information and cope okay with it, because again, I do try very hard not to be too explicit, but it's really hard when you've been through those experiences to put it into words that are not explicit. And I just to thank everybody for watching and listening, knowing when you watch somebody who's gone through the sort of things that I've gone through, that it will at times be confronting. But I just feel so appreciative of people still watching this sort of content, even though it is confronting. I mean, people go to the cinema to watch a horror movie, but they know it's fake. When they listen to something like what I'm talking about, Kathy O'Brien, Gloria Masters, these beautiful women who have also been through very similar experiences, there's going to be stuff in there that's really intense. So I know that they appreciate that people are still willing to listen, because it's about education. And this is really important. It's also about healing, because there's plenty of people out there who don't get a voice, who are too frightened to speak out, who find it very helpful to hear people like myself speak about these things. So thank you, everybody, for listening.
Oh, wonderful. And I know everybody, if they had a voice on this channel right now, I'll be saying, thank you, Rachel Vaughn. You're so beloved and, important and special. And, I myself am so grateful to know you. Love you so much, and looking forward to more time together to bring information into the field as people are healing on their own journeys. Because, we love you guys out there. We do. We really do. We care about you and your healing. So thank you again, Rachel. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Love you, Danny. Thank you.
And to you guys out there, thanks for being here, and just be gentle with yourself for a little while after this broadcast. Just give yourself time to process and be okay with it. It's people like Rachel who've survived that are one of the reasons why this channel exists, and probably one of the reasons why you're listening, because maybe you've experienced something similar, or your heart wants to help people like her and others heal. But overall, we are ending it in our lifetime. This SRA, these governments, this corruption, these limp, impotent nothings, they're all being taken down. And we are watching history because we're writing it. All right. Lots of love to you all. I'll see you soon.